talks about America's homeless problems. Every single influencer on YouTube, Instagram, doesn't matter what, talks about America's homeless problems. Your mom on Facebook talks about America's homeless problems. Why do I need to cover something that's being covered to absolute death and is such common knowledge that a freaking cricket living under a rock in the middle of the Sahara Desert knows about it? No, I talk about the problems in China, and that's because nobody talks about the problems in China, and it is to the detriment of the Chinese people that are suffering, the homeless people in China who have been left disenfranchised, who are being power-washed off the sidewalks, who are being detained, bussed back to the rural countryside, ignored, swept under the rug, treated like shit, and subhuman. That's why I talk about China, and I challenge you to talk about the homeless problem in China too. Do you have the strength to stand up to what the Chinese government's willing to do if you actually do talk about it? Do you have the strength to stand up to the army of propagandists that will come after you if you talk about it? I know I do. I've been doing it for years, and I've suffered greatly. I've taken massive hits against my reputation, massive hits against my family's safety, and massive hits against what I do. People out there targeting me personally, trying to intimidate me into silence because I happen to talk about the very real problems that China faces. And that is why your mom on Facebook, Joe Rogan, Philip DeFranco, CNN, mainstream media across the world is not talking about China's massive homeless problem. Because China is an incredibly opaque country. You cannot see in. Nothing is shared. Don't forget the massive censorship apparatus which blocks 80 to 90% of the internet in China, blocks film, TV, radio, books, censors, education, censors, everything. It works both ways. Not only do they prevent any news or unwanted information coming into China, they also prevent any unwanted information going out of China. Not only that, if the information does get out of China, they will send an army of propagandists and misinformation agents to attack whoever is saying and telling that news. And of course they can do that because they keep their doors closed. I'll give you an analogy. In a neighborhood, if one of your neighbors leaves his door open and his house is kind of filthy, everybody can look inside. And they can point to that neighbor and say, he's kind of a messy guy. Look at his filthy living room. You can see it from his front door. But one of the neighbors who keeps his doors closed is even worse. In fact, his entire interior of his house is just rotten and disgusting. But because his door is closed, he can stand on his porch and point to that neighbor with the door open and say, look how messy that neighbor is. Look how disgusting he is. And everybody focuses on that neighbor instead of him. And that's what the Chinese government does by engaging on Twitter and social media across the world, pointing fingers at American homeless problems and pretending as if nothing like that happens in China. It's such a good tool at their disposal, so much so that the Chinese Foreign Ministry and Chinese officials constantly post about America's homeless issue. All the sycophants, propagandists, and foreign propagandists that work for China constantly glorify China for having no homeless people and denigrating America and the West for not being able to control their homeless problem. Of course, this works very well if nobody can see the truth. So I hope I've been able to shed a little light on the truth here and irrefutably prove to you that China does indeed have a homeless problem.